20 employers who got what they deserved. Have you ever worked for a boss who seemed to think they could treat people however they wanted? Maybe they took credit for your work, played favorites, or made your life miserable for no reason. Well, sometimes karma comes around in the most unexpected ways, and these 20 stories show that even the worst employers eventually get what's coming to them. Get ready, because some of these stories are wild. 1. The boss who fired someone for being late and got fired himself. Tom had a boss who was obsessed with punctuality. Every time Tom was a minute late, he'd get a stern talking to. It was so bad that Tom was constantly stressed about being on time, even for things beyond his control. One day, Tom's boss was a no-show for a big meeting. Hours passed and no word. Finally, Tom and the team found out that the boss had been fired for their own lateness. Turns out, they had been late for a critical meeting with upper management, and that was the last straw. Tom couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction. The manager who hired his friends and lost everything. Stephen was a hard-working employee at a growing company until his boss, Greg, started hiring only his friends, even though they weren't qualified for the roles. Morale plummeted, and the talented employees started leaving. Stephen stuck around because he loved the company, but soon it became clear that the place was sinking fast. Eventually, the company hit rock bottom. Greg's poor management and biased decisions led to massive layoffs, including his own. The company had to shut down, and Greg was left without a job. Karma hit him hard, but Stephen found a new role at a better company, where his hard work was actually recognized. The boss who made fun of employees' breaks until they took his. Jenna worked for a boss who constantly mocked employees who took breaks, calling them lazy and unproductive. One day, Jenna and the team decided to take a stand. They organized a break rally. Everyone walked out and started taking longer breaks than usual. A few weeks later, Jenna's boss was caught taking long breaks himself during critical hours. He was caught lounging around on the company's dime. When the employees reported it, he was immediately fired. Sometimes, it's the smallest actions that get noticed. The employer who micromanaged everything until his business failed. Ryan's boss was a perfectionist, always hovering over his shoulder, second-guessing every decision he made. If Ryan typed an email, his boss would read it and rewrite it. If Ryan had an idea for a project, his boss would insist on doing it himself, even if Ryan had a better plan. One day, Ryan's boss pushed his micromanaging to the limit and tried to take credit for a project Ryan had done. In the end, the team was frustrated, and clients noticed the drop in quality. The business suffered, and the boss was ousted by investors for poor management. Ryan moved on to a more supportive company, where he could finally thrive. The boss who played favorites and lost his top employees. Megan worked for a company where the boss, Steve, had a favorite employee, and it was clear to everyone. He would give them the best projects, the biggest bonuses, and the most praise, while the rest of the team got nothing. Eventually, the other employees got fed up. They all left to find better work environments, and Megan took the lead in starting a new company. Steve's favorite employee eventually left as well, realizing that working for a toxic environment wasn't worth the perks. Steve ended up with no team and no clients. It's a tough lesson to learn, but you can't run a business on favoritism. 6. The boss who stole ideas and lost it. Lisa had a manager who was constantly taking credit for her work. No matter how many brilliant ideas she came up with, her boss would present them as their own. Lisa was tired of being overlooked, but she didn't speak up at first. Then, during a big pitch meeting, Lisa's idea was stolen again. But this time, Lisa had a plan. She anonymously leaked her idea to the press, and within hours, the story spread across social media. Her boss was exposed as a fraud, and the company lost its reputation. Lisa was promoted, and her boss was fired for unethical behavior. 7. The boss who demanded loyalty, but was disloyal himself. Gary's boss always preached loyalty to the company, promising that hard work and dedication would lead to success. However, Gary found out the hard way that his boss had betrayed the company by secretly cutting deals with competitors for his own benefit. When this came to light, the company's stock price plummeted, and Gary's boss was arrested for fraud. Meanwhile, Gary received a promotion and a significant bonus for his loyalty to the company. It turned out that honesty really did pay off. 8. The employer who wouldn't pay. Fair wages and got caught. Rachel worked as a graphic designer for a small business. Her boss, Martin, was always cutting corners, paying employees well below the industry standard, and making excuses about how tight the budget was. Despite working long hours, Rachel was struggling to make ends meet. One day, she discovered that Martin had been inflating revenue numbers and not paying taxes on the business. Rachel took the information to the authorities. Martin was eventually caught, and Rachel walked away with a settlement check and a much better job offer from a company with fair wages. The boss who bullied employees and ended up alone. Tanya worked for a manager who was known for bullying his staff. He would make rude comments, belittle their work, and create a toxic atmosphere. The team was miserable, but they didn't have the courage to stand up to him. One day, Tanya's manager went too far, and the entire department resigned in protest. The company tried to keep him, but without a team to support him, the manager was forced to leave. He ended up working a dead-end job, alone and frustrated. His bullying cost him his career. The manager who ignored employee safety and got sued, Jim, was a construction worker for a company that had a manager, Bruce, who didn't take safety seriously. Despite safety violations being reported, Bruce refused to address the issues. One day, an accident occurred because proper safety measures weren't followed. The employee who was injured filed a lawsuit against the company, and Bruce was personally held responsible for failing to act. The company faced massive legal fees, and Bruce lost his job. The entire department became more safety conscious, with new policies in place that put employees first. 11. The boss who took credit for everything, until he got exposed. David worked under a boss who took credit for everything. If a project was successful, it was all thanks to him. If there was an issue, it was someone else's fault. David had enough. He started documenting everything, from meetings to emails, and made sure his contributions were acknowledged. Eventually, when the boss tried to claim full credit for a massive success, David presented the evidence that he had done the bulk of the work. The boss was forced to step down, and David was promoted to a leadership position. 12. The employer who exploited his employees. Until karma hit, Sarah worked for a company where the boss, Carl, made employees work long hours without proper pay. He would promise bonuses and raises, but nothing ever came. Employees were working themselves into the ground, and morale was low. But Carl didn't realize that his employees were organizing. When the time came, they banded together and filed a class action lawsuit for wage theft. The case was settled, and Carl was forced to pay back a significant amount in damages. He was also blacklisted in the industry. The company had to shut down, and Sarah moved on to a company where employees were treated with respect. 13. The manager who was too proud to learn and was left behind. Keith had a manager who refused to learn anything new. He stuck to outdated practices and ignored suggestions from the team. Over time, the company became inefficient and profits dropped. Meanwhile, Keith kept his skills sharp and learned new technologies on his own. When the company fell behind its competitors, the management team was replaced, and Keith was promoted to lead the company's growth. His old boss was left without a job and never managed to catch up with the industry. Keith's growth and adaptability paid off in the end. 14. The boss who fired employees for being sick and got fired for mismanagement. Tom's boss had a zero-tolerance policy for sick days. If employees took a day off because of an illness, they were threatened with dismissal. But one day, Tom's boss fell seriously ill and had to miss work. In the meantime, the company's performance started to drop due to poor management decisions. Tom's boss was fired for his negligence, and Tom was promoted to a higher position where he could implement better policies, ones that respected employees' health and well-being. The employer who promised big raises but never delivered. Karen worked for a company that promised huge raises to employees who performed well. She was one of the top performers, and year after year she was told that her raise was just around the corner. But when the time came, there was always an excuse: budget cuts, reorganization, or just not enough profit. After a while, Karen realized she was being taken advantage of. She left the company, and shortly after, the company started losing its best employees. The boss's inability to deliver on promises led to a massive turnover, and the company struggled to stay afloat. Karen, on the other hand, found a company that valued her work and paid her what she deserved. The boss who stole employee ideas and got outed. Daniel had been working at a marketing firm for several years when he noticed his boss, Phil, had a habit of stealing employee ideas and passing them off as his own. Daniel had suggested several innovative strategies that led to successful campaigns, but Phil always took the credit. One day, Daniel had had enough. He started documenting the ideas he came up with and sharing them in team meetings to make sure they were properly credited. Eventually, Phil tried to pitch Daniel's idea as his own to a major client. But Daniel exposed him by presenting the exact email chain where he first shared the idea. Phil's reputation was shattered, and he was fired for misconduct. Daniel was promoted to lead the team, and the company started recognizing employees for their hard work. 17. The boss who fired employees. Over minor mistakes and lost his job. Molly worked for a boss who had unrealistic expectations. If employees made even the smallest mistake, they were immediately fired. He had no patience for anything less than perfection. One day, Molly made a minor error on a report, nothing that couldn't be fixed, but her boss still fired her on the spot. What he didn't realize was that Molly had been well-liked by the clients and other employees. The news of her firing spread quickly, and the team was outraged by the unfair treatment. A few weeks later, the company realized that they were losing clients left and right because of the poor morale and the sudden departures of talented employees. The boss was fired for mismanagement, and the team was brought back together under new leadership. 18. The boss who bullied a quiet employee and was exposed. Rick's boss, Peter, had a reputation for being ruthless and cruel, especially towards quiet or introverted employees. One day, Peter started targeting Rick, a shy but diligent worker, for no reason at all. He constantly criticized Rick in front of the team, belittling him and making him feel worthless. Rick, fed up, decided to document everything, every nasty comment, every unfair treatment. He secretly recorded one of the bullying incidents and shared it with the higher-ups. The next day, Peter was called into a meeting and was fired on the spot. Rick, meanwhile, was promoted to a leadership role, where he made sure the work environment was fair and kind for everyone. As for Peter, He never worked in the industry again. The boss who played dirty to win contracts and lost everything. Lori worked as a project manager for a tech company, and her boss, Kyle, had no qualms about playing dirty to win contracts. He would sabotage competitors, spread lies, and even steal proprietary